So today I read an article talking about how there is a mayor in Ukraine who has stated that Ukrainian nationalists have been butchering members of the clergy in Ukraine. This mayor is the mayor of a town called Sviatogorsk. His name is Vladimir Bandura. And this is what Vladimir Bandura had to say. Quote, "There is information and confirmed that the Nazis kill clergy, monks, and hide this fact. The next thing is that all bodies of the armed forces of Ukraine are doing looting, robberies, etc." And this is not really that surprising. He doesn't give any specific details. He doesn't give any specific examples of this happening, but it would not be surprising if this is indeed happening, because for years in Ukraine, there have been tensions against the Orthodox Church in Ukraine that is under the Moscow Patriarchate. For many years, Ukrainian nationalists have been trying to purge Ukraine of the Orthodox Church that is under the Moscow Patriarchate. For example, in 2008, a Ukrainian nationalist by the name of Irina Farion stated, quote, "I think that the structure that calls itself a Moscow Patriarchate has nothing to do with Christianity. It is one of the greatest threats for independent and self-sustained development of Ukraine. As long as this institution occupies the Kiev-Pecherska Lavra, an ancient monastery in Ukraine, a Ukrainian will be enslaved." So they are Ukrainian nationalists in Ukraine who for years have been believing that the Moscow Patriarchate literally enslaves the Ukrainian Christians, literally enslaves the Ukrainian Orthodox, and is part of the occupation of Ukraine. In July of 2010, when Patriarch Kirill visited Ukraine, Ukrainian nationalists met him with signs that said, quote, "Down with Moscow colonizer priest, Ukrainian Orthodox Church against Moscow heresy, and Moscow Patriarchate, spiritual occupant." On May of 2012, around 30 Ukrainian nationalists attacked a church in the Dnipro part of Kiev. They vandalized Christian symbols, destroyed the altar, damaged the crucifix and icons, and threatened the clergy. In the name of the nation, such people became antichrist. In April of 2013, 300 Ukrainian nationalists carrying the flags of the Svoboda Party, the Svoboda Party is the Nazi party of Ukraine, tried to storm a church in Novo-Arkhangelsk. They broke the gates and the doors of the church and tried to hit the clergy who were in the courtyard of the church. And I've seen a video in which you have a Ukrainian Orthodox priest who is under the Moscow Patriarchate facing a mob of Ukrainian nationalists, and he says, "Glory to God," and the Ukrainian nationalists respond with, "Slava Ukraina," glory to Ukraine. So Ukraine is their religion, not God. It's Ukraine that's their religion. There is a very popular saying amongst Ukrainian nationalists, and that is that Bandera is our father, Ukraine is our mother. It's like that scene from the Temple of Doom where Indiana Jones is possessed with the spirit of Kali, and he says, "Kali is our mother." It's like that. It's not, this tension, this conflict is not just within the dimension of the secular. It also has a religious dimension, because the Ukrainian nationalists want to purge all of the churches in Ukraine that are under the Moscow Patriarchate. In fact, recently I got into a little discussion with a Ukrainian nationalist online, and he told me that these churches under Moscow Patriarchate should have been removed from Ukraine years ago. It doesn't surprise me to hear that Ukrainian nationalists are murdering members of the clergy, because when Ukrainian nationalists were murdering Polish people, they were also murdering members of the clergy. In fact, there's a great website that you can go to. It's called voliniamassacre.eu. It's a website that's dedicated to talking about the massacre of Polish people by Ukrainian nationalists, by the Ukrainian members of the OUN and the UPA. OUN stands for the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. UPA stands for the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. And it says here that many priests actually were murdered by these Ukrainian nationalists in the early 1940s. But it specifies two priests. It talks about Joseph Shostak and Piotr Moizionek. And they were both murdered by Ukrainian nationalists. And it also talks about the murder of a priest by the name of Father Piotr Walczak. And it says here that he was brutally murdered on the road between Lutsk and Lavriv in the village of Polonka. And it says here that during the Bloody Sunday of July 11th, 1943, when the UPA attacked nearly 100 Polish settlements and villages, 2 priests were murdered while celebrating a mass. Father Josef Alexandrovsk, the parish priest of Zlabotsi, and Father Jan Kotwicki, the parish priest of Kiev. The neck of the former was broken, and his body was abandoned at the foot of the altar. Father Kotwicki was killed when he tried to flee the church. His body was taken by his sister, who survived the massacre, and 2 other women to Volodymyr Volinsky, and buried in the local parish graveyard. So the very spirit that possessed the Ukrainian nationalists in the early 1940s possesses the Ukrainian nationalists today. It possesses their souls. And such violence is not going to end soon, because such hatred is very old, and such hatred has been ongoing for many decades. And you can go all the way back to the Second World War, and you can hear and you can read about these things. The Ukrainian nationalists today have heroes who were murderers in the past, such as Andrei Melnik, who was an orchestrator of the massacre of Polish people in Volhynia. And the fact that these Ukrainian nationalists still praise such murderers tells us that the very spirit that possessed the Ukrainian nationalists in the past, possesses them today. This evil is still alive. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.